Good morning, everyone. My name is Jasper Chong, and today I will be presenting my action research proposal entitled The Effectiveness of Magic Laundry Grammar Incorporating Dice Mechanics in Improving Malay Language, in other words, Bahasa Melayu, mastery among students of varying proficiency of levels. Now, in many Bahasa Melayu classroom or like Malay language teaching sessions, students face difficulties in terms of mastering vocabulary and, of course, writing skills. Based on classroom observations, students often show that low interest or motivation, struggle to generate ideas, and of course become passive when traditional teaching methods such as drilling and note copying are used. Therefore, this is a need for a more interactive and student centered teaching approach to make learning more engaging and meaningful. Now, problem statement. The main problem identified is that traditional teaching approaches are no longer effective in engaging students in Bahasa Melayu or Malay language lessons. Why? Because students experience difficulties in selecting appropriate vocabulary, constructing sentences, and of course, expressing ideas confidently in writing. Although game based learning has been proven effective, but the use of dice based learning in Bahasa Melayu classroom, especially in secondary level or secondary school, is still very limited. So this gap motivates the need for this action research. In my own classroom observation, I mean during mock teaching or micro teaching, I noticed that students tend to wait for answers rather than attempt to construct the sentences independently. And this passive behavior affects their confidence in using Malay or Bahasa Melayu, Malay language, especially in writing tasks, which require idea development and language accuracy. The purpose of this study or this research is to examine the effectiveness of dice based learning in improving motivation for students and language mastery in Bahasa Melayu. In addition, this study aims to explore students' responses towards the use of dice as a learning tool during Bahasa Melayu teaching sessions or lessons. This study is guided by three main objectives. The first one will be to improve students' interest and motivation in learning Bahasa Melayu. And the second one will be to enhance students' vocabulary master and writing skills through activities like dice-based learning. And last but not least, the third one will be to examine the overall effectiveness of dice-based learning in teaching and of course learning process of Malay language, Bahasa Melayu. So based on the objectives, this study is guided by three research questions. The first question is how dice-based learning affects students' interest in learning Bahasa Melayu. And the second question will be how dice based learning helps to improve students' vocabulary and, of course, writing skills. The third question will be focuses on students' responses towards the use of dice-based learning and, of course, game-based learning in Bahasa Melayu lessons or teaching sessions. Previous studies show that game-based learning is effective and it increasing student engagement, participation, and, of course, understanding of language concepts. So, in literature review, where studies involving dice-based learning also indicate improvements in vocabulary mastery, creativity, and, of course, writing skills. But, however, the most of the studies focuses on English language learning or early childhood education, so which highlights the need for further research in Malay language, Bahasa Melayu classrooms, particularly at the secondary level. And based on the literature review, several studies also highlight that the game-based learning creates a low anxiety environment, which, of course, it's good where positive environment in the teaching sessions is very important, which helps students feel more comfortable making mistakes during language learning. So dice-based activities or game-based activities in particular encourage spontaneous thinking and peer interaction between students or teachers, and which are essential for vocabulary acquisition and writing development. So, based on the research gap, addressing the need for more studies in Bahasa Malay education, and based on the literature review, several research gaps were identified. Firstly, there are limited studies focusing on dice-based learning in Bahasa Melayu education concept. And secondly, most existing studies focus on young generation or young learners rather than secondary school students. Lastly, there are few action research studies that examined the use of dice-based learning in real classroom settings where these studies aims to address these gaps. In terms of theoretical framework, this study is grounded in game-based learning theory, which emphasizes active participation and emotional engagement between students in the learning process. So the conceptual framework follows the classroom action research cycle, which includes planning, action, observation, and reflection. So throughout this continuous cycle, dice-based learning is refined to improve students' motivation, vocabulary mastery, and, of course, writing skills in Malay language, of course, Bahasa Melayu. The interventions of use in this study is Magic Laundry Grammar, which incorporates dice mechanics into grammar learning activities, where like students roll the dice to determine grammar elements and complete the task co-creatively with their peers. This approach creates a fun environment, structured and interactive learning environment that, of course, encourage the active participation and collaboration among students or peers. So in Magic Laundry grammar activities, students are not only learning grammar rules, but are also applying them immediately through tasks determined by the dice or the die. This approach allows students of different proficiency levels to participate at their own pace while still engaging with the same learning objectives. For example, students with the weaker proficiency or lower one benefit from peer support during cooperative tasks, while more uh, proficient students are challenged to elaborate their answers. So this study adopts an action research design which is suitable for teachers-led classroom improvement. The participants consist of students of varying proficiency levels in a Bahasa Melayu or Malay language classroom. And the intervention is that implement during regular classroom lessons or teaching sessions, allowing the teacher to observe, reflect, and of course improve teaching practices based on students' responses. And action research is particularly suitable for this study because it allows the teacher to reflect on teaching practices and make immediate improvement based on the classroom observations. And throughout the cycle of planning, action, observation, and of course reflection, the teacher is able to refine the activities and particularly for dice-based activities to better suit students' needs. In terms of data collection, data for this study is collected by three main instruments. These includes observation checklists to record students' participation, student worksheets to access vocabulary and of course writing skills, along with teacher reflection notes to evaluate the effectiveness of the intervention. Now, the data is analyzed qualitatively to examine the changes between students' engagement and language mastery, along with learning behavior. This study is significant as it provides practical guidance for teachers on how dice-based learning can be integrated into Bahasa Melayu or Malay language lessons or teaching sessions. It also supports teachers' professional development by encouraging reflective teaching practices and innovative instructional strategies. In addition, this study may serve as a reference for future research in terms of game-based learning, but of course, along with language education. In conclusion, this action research addresses real challenges faced in Bahasa Melayu, in other words, Malay language, classrooms by introducing a creative and engaging teaching approach. Throughout this implementation of this game based learning, specifically dice based learning using magic laundry grammar, students are expected to become more motivated, confident, and of course, effective in their learning process in terms of language for Bahasa Melayu. So that's all from me, and this is my research proposal presentation. Thank you, and thank you for your attention. Have a good day.